Okay, and one more question for Dave, because I know you need to go early. Is each building evaluated for moving potential, i.e. moving a building to a new location before it is deconstructed or demolished?
Right, that's a very good question. You know, on my website there's a page that says "Move it or lose it." So we are definitely promoting buildings being moved, and in the Northwest we're definitely a hotbed for that activity. There's lots of homes being moved, and in my training class, it was one of the topics of the training class is how, you know, what's the potential of moving the structures that we look at, and what kind of value does that hold, and how different ways to convince building owners to help fund that sometimes very expensive process. So yeah, that's definitely a consideration, and I know that King County, that I'm a consultant for, King County, the county that Seattle is in, they factor that into their decisions when they're removing buildings. Like maybe they're removing a house to create a park. They start by, we promote the idea that they start by looking at moving a house, and then they look at deconstructing it, and then they look at salvaging it, and then they look at demolishing it in that order.
Okay, great. That's an excellent answer. Thank you. So this is a question that came in for you, MaryEllen, but I think others may be able to add to it as well. And the question is, how much, if at all, have you been working with existing businesses to let them know that they are a part of reuse?
Well, I always joke that people don't know they're part of the reuse sector until I tell them they are. And because I say that because most organizations don't come into reuse for reuse's sake. They might have a social mission. It could be an economic development mission, such as Goodwill. A habitat restore is just in the game in order to, excuse me one second. In order to be able to give money to their affiliates. So I mean, everybody comes to it from a different thing. People that are in, you know, used bookstores and used musical equipment and whatever the case may be, and reusables and say Zipcar, and you know, you're reusing the car and tool lending libraries. Until we talk about reuse, there's always an aha moment that says, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. And that is where we start the discussion. And then, you know, some organizations understand that this is a great, just another network, and in this climate and this economy, it's good to have friends and different networks to be part of. So some people embrace it immediately. Other people kind of warm up to it gradually.
Okay, great, thanks. Does anyone else have anything to add? That's okay. And we had a question for you, and actually I think two questions that kind of go well together. So for your business, for Scrap Exchange, what type of zoning is required? And then also, is the storage considered recycling, necessitating a license to recycle, or is that not a problem?
The zoning that we're in a commercial district, and we do have some retail zoning as well. And we were in both locations. That's what the zoning was for, and I think light industrial as well. And as far as licensing goes, no. As far as I know, we don't need any licensing related to recycling. We are not recycling anything here. It's all reuse, repurposing, reselling. Yeah.
Okay.
That's definitely a distinction we always like to make, is reuse is different than recycling. When people talk about, you know, when they're talking about recycling jobs and how they're menial and whatnot, reuse is completely different. You're talking about meaningful, often well-paid jobs. I mean, these are not, you know, along a recycling line picking cans, you know, at minimum wage. These are, generally speaking, you know, meaningful jobs that you can make a living at. So
MaryEllen,
we do like to.
Another question that came up for you is sort of related, and that is, what are good projects for municipalities? And I think sort of tying into that, I would add, how can municipalities or solid waste management districts, whatever the structure may be, in this specific area of the country, how can they start to sort of link reuse with their recycling programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, whoever brought that up. Well, we're working on a project in Minnesota through our Minnesota chapter, and we're being funded by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And it's really all about that. It's creating a network and an environment where the reuse organizations have a direct line to the counties and the municipalities, and they're really opening up that conversation. How can we work together? What is the impact of reuse? Getting that information out. They recently did a study that I can't really talk about the details of it because they haven't released it yet, but the impact in terms of job development is huge. And I think once municipalities understand the triple bottom line benefits, they'll want to engage with the reuse organizations. And we can certainly help them meet their targets. Obviously there's no set targets for reuse in most municipalities unless they have a zero waste plan. But we can certainly help them down that road towards zero waste, whereas recycling is kind of just a circle that you can't get out of. You recycle it, you need more, whereas reuse is more in the waste prevention. We're up that stream, that hierarchy. So they could do host swaps and what we call reuse rodeos, which are community reuse days. They can have materials exchange sheds within their convenience sites or landfills or dumps. They can start R&D projects to find out what is going on in the reuse community. They can start reporting those to their states. There's just a whole host of ways that we can work with municipal organizations, and we have several as members.
Can I add something to that briefly?
Absolutely.
I was just talking to Blair Pollock from Orange County Solid Waste yesterday, and Muriel as well. We are very interested in placing a staff person at the landfill to collect the materials, or landfill or a transfer station, to really divert the materials from getting hauled away if it's a transfer station or going into the landfill. So really making sure that these resources that can be easily reused and recovered are recovered, and that there's something like, we were talking about an eco-industrial district surrounding the landfill and what that looks like, similar to what's happening with Urban Ore. I know Urban Ore has had someone at their landfill for many years. So I feel like that's the best practice with a landfill or a transfer station, is to make sure that there's distribution points for saving the materials that can be salvaged and not having them never seen again.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for adding that.